All right, we have Tyler. Tyler has been a client for, I think we were talking close to a year and a half. During that time, have obviously addressed multiple things and really worked on the strength and getting confidence back. So really excited for this. This is the first time we've done any kind of like interview. So I'm super stoked. So okay, we're gonna get right into it. I want you to just start by kind of telling like your story, like what you were dealing with before you signed up with this random girl online, what all you had tried to fix it, and kind of the limitations, the frustrations that you were having with it.
Yeah, so I have been a little injury prone my whole life, played sports growing up and then eventually got a little bit older. But at the end, I was only, I think, 27, 28 at the time, started having some shoulder pain and eventually got to the point where I couldn't do anything. I was asking my wife to carry laundry up the stairs for me. That was a huge shot to my ego. Cooking dinner was an issue. So first thing I got a MRI, nothing, ended up going to PT and there was a million different things that they tried on me. For those who have experienced dry needling, it was brutal. Basically sticking needles in my muscles. Caitlin, you could talk more about what exactly that is, but man, is it painful. Had needles stuck in my muscles twice a week for a long time. Was also going to a chiropractor on top of it. I tried every type of massage, cupping, the woo-woo massages where people are saying affirmations at me, whatever you want to call the different types of massages, but really nothing was working. Or I would get to the point where, hey, I go to physical therapy and they get me back to a point where I was able to do little things like, carry 10 pounds up the stairs or cook dinner. I'm fine. But I was never able to get back to the point where I had always been, which I've worked out my entire life since I was 14 years old. Always loved lifting weights. It's been my outlet. And anytime I, quote unquote, graduated physical therapy, traditional physical therapy, I would start trying to lift how I've always lived, and I would end up right back in the exact same position and right back to, going to a chiropractor twice a week, going to physical therapy twice a week, getting a massage once a week. And as you can imagine, it was extremely expensive, extremely frustrating. And not only was my physical health really struggling, like my mental health was struggling right with it because, it's just a shot to your confidence when I went through my life as, kind of like the strong guy around my family, around my friends. And then I'm this, guy that needs help carrying more than 10 pounds around. So, yeah, a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Uh, Bit of a struggle for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny because we'd actually had a call scheduled and I'm pretty sure you got a little nervous and you canceled it. So what do you feel like the biggest fear was about the program? Like obviously you're here, obviously we've gotten results. What do you feel like the biggest fear was and like what kind of, I guess, put that at ease whenever, you did decide to join the program?
Yeah, I think the biggest question that just stood out is, everything that I'm doing right now is physical therapy where I go in and there's a person hands-on. I go to the chiropractor, they crack me hands-on, massage is hands-on. I'm like, how in the heck can this random person that I met on Instagram help me when you're halfway across the country? And, you know, I took the step because it was like, hey, everything that I'm doing in person isn't working. So, we connected, on quite a few different levels. We both like country music. We both, have very, similar thoughts about how, the medical industry might not be working for a lot of people. And I was one of those people. So I'm saying, hey, Caitlin seems awesome, and I've tried everything else, so I think it's time to try something new. And thank God I did. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made, and my life is in a lot better position than it was, when I was just messaging you on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny because I feel like we are very similar. And it's like there'll be a new song that comes out and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, have you heard this?" Or I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, have you heard this?" And obviously we're talking about rehab and strength training and stuff too, but I think that that's one of the cool things. Like we are so similar and so we can connect and like like have a better relationship, a more deep in like relationship other than just like, yep, I fixed your shoulder and now we are tackling strength. That's one of the things that I really enjoy is like being able to have something where it's like our interests are similar and we can talk about those things too. So, I guess next question, as you're going through this process, as you're going through the program, what do you feel like was different about the program, how we had things set up? And everything like compared to everything else that you tried, which I mean, I hear a lot. I've tried everything. Well, like you probably did actually try everything, So what do you feel like was different about the program, the approach, all that stuff?
Yeah, I think one thing that you had taught me is pain is a liar. Just because your shoulder hurts doesn't mean it's a shoulder problem. And, at the physical therapy place I would go to is, I would have shoulder pain one week, I would have soreness in my neck the next week, I would have elbow pain the next week. And, their solution is, hey, we're going to try this dry needling. And man, it was painful, and I felt like I wasn't making any progress. So I think a big difference for you is you get to the root cause. You actually find out what is causing all the issues that are giving me these problems. Like you don't just give me some band-aid like, hey, take an ice bath, do this dry needling, your muscles will be fatigued. And, it was something where longevity matters to you. You're not just checking a box, and it was something you were invested in me in the long term versus, traditional physical therapy, everything like that, I think was just trying to get me to a certain point, get me out of there, onto the next. Where it's different with you, where signed up, I couldn't do anything. I was struggling to lift 5 pounds above my head. And now I'm to the point where, you're programming strength for me. And, I'm getting to the point where I'm stronger than I've ever been, better form, and no pain, which is all that I could ever ask for.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Was there anything that surprised you about the program, like how it's set up, how it's structured, communication, anything like that?
I mean, that you mentioned communication. Communication is, you take it to another level. And traditional PT, it was, I had, 15, 20 minutes with a physical therapist while I was getting worked on, doing my best not to cry, having to fire off all those questions. I would take notes and make sure I tried to remember every single question that I had throughout the week. Difference with you is, I can shoot you a message in the app and you get back to me so quick. And that's the big thing about when you're training in physical therapy, you need responses within a day, which is what you always give me because if I'm having a certain issue and I just went to physical therapy on Monday, another question comes up on Tuesday, I got to live 6 days in pain. And basically, it was just guesswork at that point. When now I have a question, you get back to me, and it's, I have my answer. I can make adjustments. You making adjustments is also fantastic. And, on top of the communication has been everything we've done outside of, the physical therapy, the recovery standpoint. I think it's a great reason your name is Beyond Recovery because not only have you helped me from a physical standpoint, you've helped me, from a mental health standpoint, as well as just from a confidence standpoint. I think everything kind of goes hand in hand where, if you have your physical body to a certain standpoint, that confidence is going to be great, but the mental has to come along with it. And, you've introduced me to a lot of fantastic books that have changed my life and, meditation, breath work, something that, another physical therapist, doctor, whoever you talk to is never going to even bring up that conversation. And, we've had long conversations about it that have, really helped me and, helped others that I've talked to about it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, that's exactly why my business was called Beyond Recovery. It was because well, it was multiple fold, but that was one of the reasons. So I'm glad that you're feeling that as well. Did you have any kind of like breakthrough moment where you're like, holy shit, like this is actually helping? Was there any point during the program, especially like in the early days, that you felt like that?
I mean, when I got to the point where I was lifting again, because, I think for those who have dealt with injuries that, just keep coming back, it was, finally getting to, as funny as it sounds, being able to cook dinner without the issues, carrying things up, when, not having my wife carry things around for me. That was a big thing for me, as well as when I started to see that I was progressing with my lifts. That's one thing I really love about the app that you use is, you can see that, hey, I was doing dumbbell bench press with 50 pounds last week. Now I can move up to 55 this week and get that progressive overload, when a lot of times, I've worked out for a long time. I couldn't, I just wasn't a person who was going to track. I wasn't going to be the person walking around with a notebook in the gym. I just wasn't that guy. I tried to do it on my phone, but your app makes it so easy to track, and it's really great to see the progress.
Yeah, no, I love that. And now it tells you how many like elephants and monkeys and zebras and everything else that you lifted. You've lifted X amount of animals today. Good job. Yeah. Okay, cool. So what is it? Well, actually, I want to go back. So during our time that we've worked together, you have had a few things pop up. So I know like we had the random back pain, we had the rib pain that like just kicked your butt, like it just knocked you out a little bit. We had some neck stuff. Like, what do you feel like has been helpful with that? Like, obviously I can sit here and be like, I know you, I know how you are, I know the ins and outs because over the last year and a half we've really like established like this relationship. But what do you feel like has been helpful in that regard when random things like that pop up?
Yeah, I think the communication aspect that I already talked about, because, I can sit here today, feeling great. I can say that you've helped me recover from Achilles issues, foot pain, hip pain, rib pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, bicep, elbow. Like there really aren't many things that I haven't hurt, knock on some wood. Now, Caitlin always tells me I need to knock on some wood when I say things like that. Yeah, I think it was the communication, and it was, hey, this isn't working. Send me a video of you doing this exercise. Or it's like the constant check-ins, I think, are really what separates you apart. It's not some cookie cutter thing. It's not you're going to give me the same exercises as the next person. And, your check-ins that you send out every single week on Friday, get those 7 to 8 questions done. That it's, how is your pain? How have you progressed this week? What issues are you facing? How can I support you better? It just shows how much you care. And it really got me to the point where, because the first thing you try isn't always going to work. And I think a lot of people get frustrated with that. Like, you're a physical therapist. How can you not fix my shoulder pain with the first 3 exercises? Like that, it's just not, that's not how anything works. And
Mm.
it's not how this works either. And I think another thing you said, it's like peeling back an onion. And I think just your mindset really, kind of rubbed off on me. And hey, if this doesn't work, let me know. And then I let you know. There was so much communication, I mean, however many weeks, months that we were on a call every single week. I think that's really what it took. Most people who work with you are, hopefully don't have as many issues and as many injuries and as many, layers of that onion to peel back, but I did. And, it's one of those things, like, if you can help me get to the point where I'm at now versus the point that I was, you can help anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that should be a question on my intake paperwork. It's like, are you like Tyler? Yes or no?
Yeah.
If they say yes, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I would take 100 of you. 'Cause you're actually someone who will do the work, you will communicate, and like I even worked with your wife at one point too, and like I just love you guys. Like you guys are just awesome. So no, I would take 100 of you. So maybe we'll flip that. Are you like Tyler? Yes or no? If they say yes, then they're automatically in the program and I don't have to do any more interviews. So what do you feel like the biggest transformation's been overall? And I know we've kind of touched on it, but like, are there any specific lifts? Is there a specific feeling? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's true with a lot of my lists, because, funny enough, I got my NASM certification in college. I've always been really passionate about health and fitness. I never really did much with it, but I always thought of myself as, somebody who was very, very good at training, very good at lifting. But there's been, so many lifts that I just learned that I was doing incorrectly. And the movement patterns that you've helped me with have, I've seen it change my body, and it's so many of the main lifts feel so much better. You taught me how to correctly brace my core, and actually use my core when I'm doing, the main lifts like bench press, deadlift, squat. And I think that's a big part of where my rib pain was coming from. I had, that anterior pelvic tilt that a lot of people deal with that, you've helped me, while I'm doing those lifts, as well as, I couldn't remember the last time I did any type of bench press without shoulder pain, but it's because my form was wrong. And, it was a big part of like, kind of leaving my ego at the door, and probably what a lot of like bigger, stronger guys, have issues with is like, I've been doing bench press for 15 years. I'm doing it right. But like, a lot of times it doesn't matter, how long you've done something, and, eventually those bad movement patterns are going to catch up with you just like they caught up with me, and they just all kind of caught up with me at the same point. But, it's like you taught me how to lift correctly. And, I really wish I would have met you a long time ago. But yeah, I was to the point where I was just avoiding a lot of lifts because they caused me pain. And now I can train the way I want to train without pain.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, you mentioned like the form and the anterior pelvic tilt, but I think we've also like in the program while working together, we've realized, hey, there are a lot of things that go into pain, and there are a lot of things that can go into, someone feeling like they have an injury. So, over the last year, year and a half, we've really focused on like the mindset piece. I mean, Jordan has your nutrition like dialed in, because I'm jealous of the meals that that woman cooks, because they just all sound so good. We've talked about sleep. We've talked about, like, hey, how are you sitting during the day? Hey, like, here are some things that we can incorporate. Here are some things that we can do, while also like helping you move better from a mobility standpoint, helping you continue to like strengthen the areas that we need to strengthen. And then, yeah, like you said, like the form and everything like that. So I think, a lot of people get stuck on this, like, well, it's my form, or it's this, or it's that. But really, I mean, I don't know that there's not a topic that we haven't talked about. So, okay.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. What would you say to someone who's struggling like you were?
I was at a point where I was, at a very, very low point in my life. I was struggling physically, and because I was struggling physically, I was struggling mentally. And I really had tried everything, like physical therapy, massage, chiropractic, whatever it was. I'm probably forgetting quite a few things. And I'd also spent 10 times as much money trying to fix it than I had spent with you. And it's just something that you need to take that leap, because it truly has changed my life.
Yeah. I think we talked about it, and I can't remember if it was like the first call or if it was like one of our coaching calls, but you had talked about, like obviously you're a high performer and you're always looking to like can, improve, and how can I be better, and how, like, even if it's just like 1% better, like what can I do? And I know one of the things that we talked about, again, I don't remember exactly what call it was, because we've had a few, but you were basically like, when my physical stuff is like firing and I feel good, everything else is like a trickle down effect. Like that is like my base. And when I'm progressing in the gym, when I feel good, when I'm able to be active, when I'm able to exercise, literally like my discipline gets better, my nutrition gets better, my habits get better, I want to read more. And so it, like for you, and I know that this is true for a lot of other high performers, like when that physical fitness component is taken care of, is just a huge trickle down effect, and then it affects your relationships and everything like that. And literally, again, like I don't remember when it was, but that has stuck with me since we talked about it, because it is such a true and like important concept to grasp. So yeah, no, I think all that, I feel like a lot of people resonate with that too. So, okay. If you had to describe Beyond Recovery in one sentence, what would it be?
Oh man.
I know, putting you on the spot.
Yeah, one sentence. Then I probably can't include beyond recovery in the sentence. Let me think. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say a full service vehicle that's going to drive you to exactly where you want to be.
I dig it. I like it. What would you say to someone who's on the fence about joining the program?
That it's worth it. I was back and forth for a little bit. I think you had said that I actually canceled our first call and I went with my gut. And as I've said, early with this, it was the best decision I've made. And just how in depth you are makes all the difference in the world. So many people struggle with physical therapy of getting these cookie cutter things. I've seen firsthand the amount of time and energy that you put into myself, my wife, and all your other clients. And I just know that, if somebody's on the fence, that they should know that they're getting every little bit that you have. And I truly think they'll get results just like I got.
Yeah. Boom. Well, I'm super stoked. We've been, like I said, on this thing for a year and a half. We've addressed a bunch of things. We're really working on the strength training and all those things. But I'm super excited to keep going and keep growing. Who knows? We might have to have another one of these here in a few months after we've hit some bigger PRs. So anyway, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on. Super stoked to kind of rehash everything.
Yeah, appreciate it.